This is All India Radio, Power of Listening. Under the series, today we take you on a journey to the world of another magnificent facet of Indian traditional knowledge systems. In today's episode, we'll be talking about preserving a legacy, featuring the Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute, Pune, home to rare books and manuscripts, and the ongoing efforts towards digitization. Stay tuned. Iconic educational institutions are the jewels of the city of Pune, and unique among them is the Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute. With its strident efforts to understand the ancient past of India and a consistent focus on evolving with rapidly changing times, the Bhandarkar Institute has a lot to offer to today's dynamic India, rather the emerging New India. Established in 1917, the Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute is situated in the heart of Pune. The institute is well known for its collection of the rarest of books and manuscripts. The institute is also world-renowned for research on subjects such as Mahabharata, Vedic studies, Sanskrit literature, Prakrit and Jain literature, as well as Buddhism. Let's begin with the history of the institute. This is Bhupal Patwardhan, chairman of the executive board of the institute, expressing his thoughts.
It is a matter of pride for us that Bhandarkar Institute is the first institute in the field of Oriental studies and Indology, which was established by the people of India. In 1917, students of Dr. R.G. Bhandarkar led efforts to establish such an institute in Pune in honor of Sir R.G. Bhandarkar. Supported by common people from Pune and also other parts of India, they also received a help from influential personalities such as Lokmanya Tilak, Balasaheb Pant Pratinidhi of Aun Sansthan and Tata family. On the day of establishment itself, institute was blessed to receive two collections which laid the foundation of fruitful future. First was the personal collection of 2700 books of Sir R.G. Bhandarkar, and second was the collection of manuscript curated by the provincial government.
Sir Ramakrishna Gopal Bhandarkar was one of the foremost pioneers of scientific Orientology in India. His genius was versatile. His areas of research included Vedic studies, philosophy, epigraphy, numismatics, history, et al. Sir Bhandarkar's personal collection of 2,700 books laid the foundation of the library. The collection includes various encyclopedia, numerous treatises of Indian and Western scholars on subjects such as Vedas, Upanishads, Darshans and epics. It also includes many books on history, religions, philosophy and archaeology. In later years, the library grew to such an extent that it required setting up a new library building. The present-day library building was constructed in 1962. Today, the library is home to more than 1,53,000 rare, iconic books. Dr. Sreenand Bapat, who works as registrar and the curator at the Bhandarkar Institute, is an expert on Indology and intimately aware of the history of the institute. He gives us a deeper insight into this.
After Sir Bhandarkar donated his collection of 2,700 valuable books to the institute received various collections and important books from scholars from all over the world. It also purchased and procured books and journals, and particularly for its projects like that of the Vedic bibliography, various books were sent by publishers. Today the library has something like 1,54,000 volumes, out of which about 60,000 are the volumes of journals, and about 80,000 are the other books. There is a beautiful reference section which contains encyclopedia on various topics. And there are several rare and important books like the copy of the first edition of the Rigveda by Max Muller. Now, this library is visited by scholars from all over the country and abroad, and it is open for everybody who has its membership. So, its benefit is taken by students and scholars from all over the world.
Many of the books in Bhandarkar's library are more than a century old. The oldest book dates back to the year 1820. These books are in Indian and foreign languages and cover a diverse range of topics. It includes a vast collection on Veda Sanhitas and Vedic studies, collections on Upanishads, Mahabharata and Ramayana, Darshans, Sanskrit literature, and Indian schools of philosophies. In the library, there are almost 1,000 rare literary resources on Buddhism as well. One can also find hundreds of rare treatises on Ayurveda, Yoga, Kama Shastra, Natya Shastra, besides many books on the social history of ancient India through subjects such as food, daily life, and trade, as was prevalent then. Beyond simply being a collection of books, the library of the Institute has served as a productive sanctuary for many a great mind. Bharat Ratna Panduranga Vaman Kane, S.K. Belwalkar, V.S. Sukthankar, Dharmanand Kosambi, P.K. Gode, P.L. Vaidya, Professor P.V. Bapat, Professor V.V. Gokhale, R.N. Dandekar, M.A. Mehindare, M.R. Yardi, and many such scholars have devoted time in this library and published works that have stood the test of time. While they enrich themselves through the collection of books and manuscripts available at the Institute, they also enrich the Institute with donation of their individual collections of books and manuscripts. Dr. Sreenand Bapat is here to tell us more about these collections and manuscripts at the Institute.
It was Dr. George Buehler who had initiated the scheme of collection of rare and important manuscripts. And then it was adopted by the government of India. And so collections of manuscripts were made by the then presidency governments of Calcutta, Madras and Bombay. Now this collection of the Bombay government was made from Kashmir, Rajasthan, Gujarat, Bombay presidency, which was spread up to Dharwad. And they had a mandate of collecting rare and important manuscripts by donation or even by purchase. This collection of about 17,000 manuscripts, which was placed in the Elphinstone College, Mumbai, was moved to Deccan College, Pune in 1878. And the founders of this institute were quite enterprising. They requested the governor of the Bombay presidency, Lord Willingdon, to hand over the collection to this institute, and he did it. So this collection of 17,000 manuscripts, which contain manuscripts from subjects like the Vedas, then Upanishads, Darshanas, the epics, Puranas, and also subjects on like science, Ayurveda, Yoga, Tantra, etc., is a very rich collection, and it also has 5,500 Jaina manuscripts, which are quite unique. This collection also has 839 manuscripts that were procured by Buehler from Kashmir, and it is perhaps the largest collection of Kashmiri manuscripts out of Kashmir. Now, after this collection of 17,000 manuscripts was procured by the institute from the government, the institute added to it about 11,000 manuscripts, and it was fortunate to receive collections from scholars like Dharmananda Kosambi, like B.N. Mundi, then Abhyankar Shastri, and several other scholars. So even today, we procure manuscripts by donation, but of course, we take them very selectively.
Manuscripts that belong to the Bhandarkar Institute comprise those tracing origins to 10 different countries. belonging to the period between the 10th century and the 19th century. And each one of them tells a story that is centuries or even millennia older. Manuscripts are uniquely significant to research on India's history. A large part of India's cultural heritage and ancient history lived on through the oral tradition for thousands of years. Vedas are the most well-known example of the oral tradition. It was through manuscripts that this oral tradition slowly morphed into the written texts. The manuscripts also gave rise to a stream of knowledge, for which there was no oral tradition. From Rigveda to mathematics, for many such subjects, manuscripts proved to be a crucial source of information. The 28,000 manuscripts in the Institute are in myriad scripts and languages, covering a vast spectrum of subjects. In an earlier episode on the history of Indian mathematics, we learnt about the Sulva Sutras. We can find some rare manuscripts on this subject at Bhandarkar. In fact, many of the manuscripts at the Bhandarkar Institute are so rare that the Bhandarkar Institute may be the only place to find them. Let's hear more about the rich history and significance of these rare manuscripts from Dr. Amruta Natu, who works as the Assistant Curator at Bhandarkar Institute and who specializes in manuscriptology.
Our ancient and medieval Indian literature has come down to us through a very long and strong writing tradition, that is, through manuscripts. The Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute has more than 28,000 manuscripts. Most of these manuscripts are written on paper, that is, handmade paper. We also have palm leaf manuscripts and birch bark manuscripts. These manuscripts are written in varied Indian regional scripts like Sharada, which was prevalent in Kashmir, Bangla, Udiya, Kannada, Malayalam, and Grantha. And of course, many of the manuscripts are written in Devanagari script. These manuscripts contain Sanskrit and Prakrit treatises. We also have some Marathi manuscripts. There are many important collections which make this library a unique one. There is a collection of manuscripts from Kashmir. Then we have a collection of manuscripts procured from Vishram Bagwada, which was a collection of manuscripts from Peshwas. Then there are a few Persian manuscripts in our collection. This collection contains Persian manuscripts like Persian translation of Bhagavad Purana, commissioned by Dara Shukho. This manuscript is well illustrated. Then we have a few manuscripts of Avesta as well. Avesta is ancient scripture of the Zoroastrians, and it has many similarities with Rigveda. These manuscripts were procured from 1866 CE onwards, and the oldest dated manuscript from our collection, it dates back to 10th century CE. It pertains date 906 CE. And this is a palm leaf manuscript. It is a Jain treatise called Upamiti Bhava Prapancha Katha. And the oldest paper manuscript from our collection, it bears date 1376 Samvat, that means 1320 CE. And it is a manuscript related to Ayurveda. It is a medicinal treatise called Chikitsa Sara Sangraha. So this is perhaps the oldest paper available in Maharashtra. And there are many manuscripts, important ones. There is a manuscript of Paryushana Kalpasutra, a very important text for the Jainas. And it has many illustrations, and it dates back to 1458 CE. Our Kashmiri collection contains very unique and valuable manuscripts of various texts. For example, Rigveda. Manuscript of Rigveda, which has been procured from Kashmir by George Buehler, it is unique and it represents the Kashmiri tradition of the Rigveda, and it has been registered in the Memory of the World Register of UNESCO. Another manuscript from the same collection from Kashmir is a manuscript of Mahabharata. This manuscript, it dates back to 16th century. It has 3 parvans from the Mahabharata, and it proved a very unique and valuable manuscript for the critical edition of the Mahabharata, which was published by this institute. And this Mahabharata manuscript represents the Kashmiri version of Mahabharata, and that's why it proved very important and as a basis, you may say, for the critical edition of the Mahabharata. I just talked about 2 manuscripts from Kashmir, and these are on birch bark and written in Sharada script. I must mention that. So these are unique in that sense as well. There is a manuscript of Bhagavata Purana, which comes from Udaipur. It is a paper manuscript written in Devanagari script. It was written in 1648 CE, and it has very beautiful 128 illustrations painted in Rajasthani style of painting. The name of the painter is mentioned in the manuscript, and it is Sahabuddin, that is Shahabuddin. And the name of the scribe is Jaswanta Bhattara. And this Bhagavata Purana manuscript is very beautiful, and it has 4 skandhas, that is parts from the Bhagavata Purana.
Manuscripts at the Bhandarkar Institute serve as a rich primary source of knowledge, based on which several seminal projects and works have been published. Perhaps the most well-known amongst them are the monumental critical edition of Mahabharata and Bharat Ratna P.V. Kane's History of Dharma Shastra. Dr. Sreenand Bapat, Registrar and Curator of the Institute, offers a glimpse into the history of these iconic projects.
The scholars from the institute did not just keep the manuscripts and books safely, but they made it a point to use the resources vigorously for their work. And so on the basis of the manuscripts of the Mahabharata and those that were also procured from outside, the critical edition of the Mahabharata came out. Now this critical edition of the Mahabharata is the largest critical edition of the largest text of the world, the Mahabharata. Now from about 734 manuscripts, the Mahabharata was edited, and you see the largest manuscript of the Mahabharata had something like 1,50,000 verses, whereas the smallest manuscript had something like 60,000 verses. So the same story narrated with so many sub-stories, upakhyanas, etc. And the critical edition that was created by the institute with an effort of 48 long years, and its completion was announced by Dr. Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, the then President of India. So this critical edition contains something like 89,000 verses in the constituted text, and all other things that were available have been given in the critical apparatus that stands below the critical text as well as in appendices. Now this technique of the critical edition was followed by many other institutions like the Oriental Institute of Vadodara, which created a critical edition of Ramayana, and many other institutions who created critical editions of Puranas and other texts. As the critical edition was going on, similarly, a very important personal project was going on at the institute, and that was the history of Dharma Shastra by Bharat Ratna Dr. P.V. Kane. Kane studied the Dharma Shastric texts vigorously, and he brought out this 6,200 page work of the history of Dharma Shastra, which is divided in 5 volumes, 8 parts put together, and he was awarded the Bharat Ratna of the year 1963 for this work. It is the only Bharat Ratna which is awarded for writing a book. In this history of Dharma Shastra, he has covered subjects like the social order of India, then also subjects like the family relations, law, and such other details. Another very important publication of the institute was the Vedic bibliography by Dr. R.N. Dandekar, in which he collected the references to Vedic studies from India and abroad, and he brought out altogether 6 volumes which contain something like 60,000 references on the Vedic studies. There was another very important man here. His name is P.K. Gode, a little less known name, and he was the curator of the institute for 41 years. He studied manuscripts vigorously and brought out 6 volumes in all. 3 of them were of studies in Indian literary history, and the other 3 on studies in Indian cultural history. All of them were predominantly based on the manuscripts and library resources of this institute.
Till date, the institute has published almost 300 books. It has published 98 volumes of annals, which have included many path-breaking research papers. Today, the robust research program of the institute engages 25 scholars and young researchers. Under this program, a rich vein of Indian history and literature is being studied. The projects include diverse topics such as the cultural index of Mahabharata, Vedas and Vedangas, the polity of Chhatrapati Sambhaji, a study of Avesta, inscriptions of the Kadamba dynasty, and contributions of modern Indian Pandits, etc. Such a dynamic and diverse research program has only become possible because of the generous public contribution and industry support. And Bhupal Patwardhan expresses gratitude about it and emphasizes on the institute's approach towards research.
There are two things that we must remember when it comes to the Bhandarkar Institute. Bhandarkar Institute is completely autonomous institute. It does not receive any grant or any kind of funding from the government. Secondly, dispassionate devotion is the mantra of the institute. We insist on academic integrity and accountability to truth in our research, and that is why society itself has always supported us. As I mentioned earlier, Bhandarkar Institute was established by the people of India and it was funded by the people. This tradition still continues. Today, all our research activities are backed by the society. An individual trust like Jathar Foundation supports project of Culture Index. There are many small contributions that lend hand to it. And then there is the Infosys Foundation that has supported our academic program. Under the program, we are carrying research on some vast topics such as Avesta and Atharvaveda, some very unique topics such as Rasopanishad, and some time-relevant topics such as environmental ethos in Indian culture. So also, Prakrit is one of the important language in our culture. There is no Prakrit English dictionary which we are making. It has been funded by Firodia Trust. And another thing is Jain prosopography, where round about 1 lakh personalities from different manuscripts are going to be collected.
For an institution so deeply entrenched in ancient history, Bhandarkar Institute has carried out a remarkable and pioneering work in the sphere of digitization. The institute has thus far digitized almost 1 crore pages of books and manuscripts. Today, we can visit the digital library at the institute at www.borilib.com. Here, one can read more than 8,000 rare books. The collection will soon stand at almost 16,000. This one-of-its-kind digital library took a long journey to become reality. Professor Sudhir Vaishampayan, Honorary Secretary of the Institute, played an instrumental role in the process. He elaborates upon the enormity of the task.
As the Institute approached its 100th year in 2017, we realized the urgent need to digitize the knowledge resources in our care. We had two goals. One is preservation, and second is the access for the scholars, researchers, and students for this great knowledge. We started in 2014. The first step was to create a digital catalog of all the books in the library and make it available online. The second step was to digitize most of the important books from our collection. This ambitious project needed great financial support. Fortunately for us, Yadi Software funded for us, which is led by Mr. Anant Yardi, and we started the work. We then decided to digitize close to 16,000 books from our library. These books were selected through rigorous screening process by our scholars. The scanning efforts was carried out by our digital partner Nyansa. Digitization of these 16,000 books was completed in span of 2 years. After the scanning process was complete, we tied up with CDAC for the creation of digital library. The digital library is today accessible to all at www.borilib.com. Simultaneously, in the National Manuscripts Mission, has carried out digitization of close to 17,000 manuscripts from our library. We are proud to share we have digitized more than 1 crore pages at the Institute in the last 4 years. But like I said, preservation of just one aspect of the digital drive is the second, increase accessibility.
Along with the digital library, the Institute was planning for a multi-pronged digital ecosystem to facilitate better learning and knowledge dissemination. And suddenly, it all came to a halt with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic threatened the very survival of the Institute. But somewhere in the existential crisis, there was a singular opportunity. The Bhandarkar Institute launched its first online course in April 2020. 6 more courses would follow. In the past 18 months, more than 3,500 people from 14 different countries, aged between 13 and 94, from all walks of life, have participated in these courses. Professor Vaishampayan further describes the journey of the digital outreach so far.
After the onset of COVID-19 pandemic, we started online courses. These short courses are 2 to 4 weeks long. We started Introduction to Indian Heritage. It received overwhelming response and we had to organize more batches immediately. We have organized 7 such courses on topics including Vedas, Mahabharata, astronomy. And we have organized total 15 batches. Almost 4,000 people have participated in these courses. We have also launched active outreach on social and digital platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Put together, we are followed by more than 50,000 people on these platforms. We are also coming to audio platforms such as Storytel and podcast. These days, we reach out close to 20 lakh people per month.
Riding on the momentum generated in the last few years, the Institute plans to scale up its infrastructure. An academic complex is currently in the offing. The ambitious project of an amphitheatre, conceptualized and supported by Abhay Virodia, chairman of the Regulating Council of the Institute, is nearing completion, and the vision to expand the academic infrastructure that could widen the horizons of research is already there. Bhupal Patwardhan, as chairman of the executive board, is leading this mission from the front and tells us more about what we can expect from the Institute in the times to come.
When it comes to our name, Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute, people still ask, why do you still call it Oriental Research Institute, not Indology? Yes, it's an Oriental Research Institute. With time, we have reimagined what the word Oriental Research in our context should mean. For us, Oriental Research is about India and its lingering impact in the continent of Asia. That is why we are in process of establishing Center of Asian Studies. There we will invite researchers and research from all Asian countries where Ramayana, Mahabharata and Buddhism has reached.
The Institute envisages a future that is audaciously ambitious. The realization of such aspirations, however, rests upon development and management of research talent at the Institute. The Institute is investing heavily into developing a world-class talent pool, and one of the critical aspects of this drive is to train people in the traditional Indian knowledge systems. Professor Vaishampayan explains these efforts further.
As we plan to scale up our activities and infrastructure, it becomes equally important to develop capable talent. One step in that direction is train them in old scripts such as Sharda, Brahmi, even Modi. And another is train them at Sanskrit and its grammar. We have thus tied up with Abhyankar with Pathshala and course of traditional Sanskrit learning that we have started. We aim to train 200 people per annum in the coming years.
The Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute is an outlier institution in its field, yet unique. The institute has been a pioneer in its establishment itself and continues to define its own paradigm. In an era of heightened curiosity about India's origins, heritage and identity, the institute realizes its responsibility. In an era of enhanced connectivity, the institute recognizes the opportunity. In an era of conflicting narratives, the institute maintains its academic integrity. With its legacy, current efforts and vision, the Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute continues being a bridge between past centuries and those that lie ahead. Power of Listening. You heard the 5th episode of our all-new series on traditional Indian knowledge systems, Power of Listening. We hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back next Friday, that is, the 29th of October, same time with another episode, taking you on a journey through our glorious traditional Indian knowledge systems. This program was scripted by Dr. Chinmay Bhandari. Narration was rendered by Manoj Mainkar. Assistance in production, Mukul Chawla and Jyoti Kaulwar. Special thanks to Randheer Thakur and Amol Parth for their contribution. The series has been conceptualized by Shashi Shekhar Vempati, CEO Prasar Bharati, and produced by Neelima Patwardhan and Vinod Kumar. This episode is also available on our official YouTube channel, Akashvani AIR. Be there on the 29th of October, same time, same frequencies. Bye for now.